And Brad, yes, coming to you from the TD Comfort Zone at the TD Toronto Jazz Festival. As you point out, Day 6, we are so excited to welcome our next guest, the great Christian McBride. And, of course, he's a world-renowned bass player, composer, arranger, and educator. And along with being one of the greats, he's played with them all, too. Rollins, Hubbard, Ray Brown, James Brown, Hancock, The Roots, and Metheny, to name but a few. Tonight, Christian will take the stage at Kerner Hall alongside drummer Brian Blade and the legendary Chick Corea, and he's here with me right now. Christian McBride, welcome.
How you doing, man?
Great to have you back in the city. How's Toronto treating you this time?
Well, Toronto's always been one of my favorite cities in the world. We just arrived about an hour ago, so we're just, getting settled in and looking forward to tonight's concert.
Let's talk about Chick to start with. I had Brian Blade on a few months ago, and he said, quote, "There's a stealth quickness and alertness that you have to have on stage when you are playing with Chick Corea." Is that your experience as well?
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, Brian nailed it on the head. You know, you always have to... See, one thing about Chick that I love, I've been working with him on and off now for 20 years. I did my first tour with him in 1996. And you think after working with someone that often, you would get into sort of a comfort zone. You kind of know what's coming. I never know what's coming, and I like it that way. You know, I love that when I get to do these very specific trio or small group projects with Chick. He likes to keep it loose, you know, lots of room for expression, creative expression. And this trio is, Brian Blade is, he's the anti-drummer. You know what I mean? Everything about Brian is the opposite of what a drummer is supposed to be.
I tried to explain that to him, and he sort of just laughed.
Yeah, I mean, he's just such an amazing painter. You know, he's an expressionistic, you know, kind of drummer. You know, and Chick, you know, what can you say about him? He's a legend for a reason. You know, he just he makes people feel good. He always brings out the best in his musicians. He always challenges his musicians, and it's always a joy to be around him.
Got to be nimble with Chick. And, I mentioned Ray Brown in the intro, but I also mentioned James Brown.
Yeah.
And you've been a band leader for much of your career, and I believe you played with James. Is that right? So what did you pick up with him as a leader of sort of a legendary act?
Well, I only got a chance to work with Mr. Brown twice. First time was in 1997. He asked me to come sit in with his group at an all-star birthday bash of his. And then I produced one of his final concerts in September of '06. It was at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles. And so I never really played in his band, but I did get a chance to spend...
You got a sense of it, though.
Oh, I got to spend a lot of time with him, you know. And, James Brown, like most band leaders of his generation, they were hard-boiled. You know what I mean? They came from an era where there was a lot of scratching and surviving, and a lot of hard edges. You know, so I don't think James Brown was too different from a lot of his peers in that sense. But of course, he's an icon. You know, he's one of those legends whose music will never go away.
You're listening to JAZZ.FM91, live from the TD Comfort Zone at the TD Toronto Jazz Festival. My name is Mark Wigmore, and my guest is Christian McBride this afternoon. He plays with Chick Corea and Brian Blade tonight at Kerner Hall. Tomorrow night, they're doing a special screening of the Jaco Pastorius documentary right here in town. It's a premiere in this city. People have been able to watch it on Blu-ray and so on. And with his sort of lineage and legend in the air, I wonder where he sits in your mind as far as bass players are concerned.
Well, for me, he's the greatest, certainly the greatest electric bass player who ever lived. He did for the electric bass what Charlie Parker did for the alto saxophone. There's very much a distinct sort of a line in the sand of electric bass before Jaco and electric bass after Jaco. Now, of course, I've admired people like Larry Graham and Bootsy Collins and James Jamerson, all of my R&B and funk heroes, and people like John Paul Jones and people like that. But Jaco was obviously sent here for a very short period of time to change the game. And that's the same thing Bird did. That's the same thing Jimmy Blanton did. That's the same thing Jimi Hendrix did. You know, they come, change the world, and then they go.
That's a great way of looking at Jocko. We feel the same way. It's high voltage energy out of that guy. You've performed at the White House. I think a lot of people saw you doing that alongside Diana Krall most recently. The world is getting ready for a changing of the guard there. President Obama leaving shortly. To the outside world, the White House really looked like a very supportive environment for jazz artists over the last 8 years. Was that your impression?
I think it was very supportive, not just jazz, but, you know, the Obamas were very much big fans of gospel music and rhythm and blues, and there was a wide swath of artists that went through the White House over the last 8 years. And I've gotten the sense that as many artists that have gone through the White House over the last 8 years, the arts culture in general hasn't necessarily progressed. You know, we still need a lot of funding. You know, we're still fighting the fight to be able to have music in public schools again, to have just sort of just music appreciation in general get to a level of, you know, it seems like the bar has been dropped so far down to an everyday layperson. They can't even tell you the difference between the trumpet and the trombone, you know. So we have to figure out a way to collectively fix that, you know.
It's interesting because I think, you know, for someone watching that on television, it looks like a wonderful experience, but I think you raise a good point. When you actually dig down and look into what's actually going on in music and culture and in schools, there's a lot of work to be done.
It's important for people to kind of look behind the glass, you know, really kind of dig underneath the surface, because, you know, like you said, people see this thing on the White House, you know, a couple of jazz cats have been through the White House, and, oh, you know, this is great, you know, things are changing. Well, you know, no, it's not changing at all. I mean, Nixon had jazz cats in the White House, you know. Jimmy Carter had a huge event in 1978 for a bunch of jazz artists. Bill Clinton probably had more jazz artists specifically. Like I said, the Obamas had a wide swath of artists that came through there, but jazz specific, Bill Clinton probably had more jazz musicians than Obama did. But, you know, again, that didn't necessarily help the entire picture. So
wasn't a holistic approach.
No, that's a collective effort of society to make that better.
I couldn't help but notice there seems to be a Christian McBride cookie on the market.
No. It's not on the market. You know, it's just a one-time deal.
Any other foods you want to associate yourself with, sir?
Oh, boy.
Look that up on Facebook, by the way. You can look up his cookie.
Yeah, if I could have some sort of a food, what would it be? I got to think about that.
We'll come back to that. I look at some of your bands over the years.
Turkey burgers.
Turkey burger, the Christian McBride turkey burger coming our way. Some of the bands over the years, the lineup with Josh Redman in particular was so ahead of its time in that moment. Looking back on it, who should we be looking out for right now? Who's exciting you?
Oh man, that's a hard one. There's a lot of really great musicians out there doing wonderful things now. Obviously, the hot name is Kamasi Washington, you know, through his association with Kendrick Lamar, and
he was just with us last week.
It's good to hear that.
Yeah.
Marquise Hill, young trumpet player from Chicago. Theo Croker is another amazing young musician who I have my eye on.
Pretty good list so far.
Marcus Strickland. My guy, Christian Sands. Man, it's just too many musicians to think of. It's a very healthy scene right now, I believe.
8 p.m. tonight at Kerner Hall, Chick Corea, Brian Blade, and the man who was so kind to offer us a few minutes today, Christian McBride. Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Live from the TD Comfort Zone and the TD Toronto Jazz Festival. TorontoJazz.com for more info on all the shows happening over these last 5 evenings. Brad Barker, back to you.